Oh hi, I didn't see you there. You're probably wondering how I ended up here, alone in the dead of night, working the graveyard shift at Frizzy Fazbear's Fent factory, cashing in on minimum wage. I sometimes wonder that myself. Was it because I dropped out of college, or was it the series of bad life choices, such as vaping? In any case, I don't dwell on it. Self-reflection would be far too beneficial, so I drown my sorrows in mobile games. This isn't GTA 6. Speaking of ripoffs, did you know that FNAF games have their own category of ripoffs? Only they're not called that, they're called fan games. They're part of the Marvel Cinematic Fanverse. It's a very wholesome initiative, so I'll avoid talking about it altogether. It turns out, when you give talented and passionate game developers a chance, they can actually produce something worthwhile. Something impressive, something better than this steaming pile of horse shit, on a smaller budget too. And there's lots of them, with very compelling price tags. Throughout the years, multiple developers have taken a crack at making their own FNAF games, taking inspiration from the characters and even coming up with their own unique gameplay. And their popularity is immense. So today, we're going to rate them. Here's my scale: 4 points for scary, 4 points for gameplay, and 2 points for story. However, before we start, I feel the need to point out that there are a lot of fan games. So to combat this, criteria had to be met, some more strict than others. If you'd like to see these criteria, click the first link in the description. Anyways, let's begin. Our first story takes place in a self-aware world, where sins are acknowledged and used for profit. Are the monsters the ones that appear to be, or are they the ones you can't quite see? The Glitched Attraction is an escape room style game, but with a twist. Instead of working solely against the clock, you're working against death. And this is a tried and tested formula. Look how much success Jigsaw had with it. Only, instead of elaborate and deadly traps, you're dealing with robotic traps. The game begins with a text message from our friend Karl, telling us about the totally cool Fazbear's attraction, and that's how I ended up here, alone in this suspiciously empty attraction. I've been to Disneyland before, people pay for dumb shit all the time, why is this place so empty? Like I said, the Glitched Attraction is an escape room styled horror game, and the objective of each level involves completing some minor task/puzzle in order to escape, all while trying not to die. But remember, it's Fazbear's Incorporated, we're not actually in any real danger. Oh, what's this? Please sign here to forfeit all your rights. Yes, please. The first level, Nightmares, takes place in what is supposedly the FNAF 4 bedroom. Here our objective is simple: escape through the closet. The problem is, said closet is boarded up and we need a hammer to crack it open. Unfortunately, the hammer is currently locked inside a safe with a 6-digit code. 12 digits on this numpad. That means there's 2,985,984 possible combinations. A lengthy endeavor if one were to guess. That, or you can solve this dank Freddy puzzle to reveal the code. Wait a minute.
I'm very smart in many other things. This ain't one of them.
712,219 onto 712,220. Do you hear something? Meet Nightmare Balloon Boy. One of the many threats we must face while trying to escape this room. The others are Friddles, the spider in my wall, and the pedophile outside my bedroom window. Now holy shit, that's actually quite a lot to deal with, but don't worry, it's actually quite simple. That pretty sick flashlight you have actually gets rid of both Friddles and Balloon Boy. And dealing with the piece of shit over at the window is as simple as closing the blinds. The only challenging antagonist is the Nightmare Puppet. In order to avoid it, you have to put on this spring-locked golden Freddy suit and hope for the best. But anyways, rummage around a few drawers, solve the puzzle, crack the code, and you've officially beaten Room 1. I'm really starting to wonder if signing that waiver was a good idea. After narrowly avoiding Nightmare Bonnie, we're then introduced to the second room, Toys. Here we're tasked with getting our hands on another 6-digit code, as well as some gears. Now this room is divided into 2 parts, the code and the gears. For the first part, we only have to deal with Chica and 6ix9ine.
Hello.
In order to avoid Chica, all we have to do is keep moving since she patrols the area in a circle. Once you piece together the code, things get a bit spicy because now we have to deal with Freddy Fazballs and the Mango. In order to keep Freddy at bay, we need to wind up his music box from time to time. Oh wow, this just keeps going, doesn't it? Oh, still going, look at that. Jesus Christ, man, how much more?
Yo, Pierre, you wanna come out here?
Red door.
And from Angle, she'll occasionally jump out of the vent and we need to hide in the locker to avoid her. The synergy of this level is done very well and acts as the main challenge here. You have to keep moving because of Chica, but you also have to hide because of Mangle. But you can't hide for too long because of Freddy, which means you have to keep moving, but you have to hide, but you have to— My god, Chica, is your BBL weighing you down? Get the fuck out of the way! After putting on my glasses, I was able to gather the gears I needed, and after flipping— Son of a— Next up is Cursed, which takes place in FNAF 3. Here we have to find another code, but that's the easy part. Things take a bit of a turn when we hop on this arcade machine. Yep, this is the aim of the game here. This is a particularly hard level because outside of the arcade machine, you also have to deal with Frank and Freddy, Springtrap, and the homeless guy who keeps asking me for money. Now I'll admit, my first time beating this room was by complete luck. The reason I say this is because in my notes for this level I don't know what I did. Listen, I heard some footsteps and I closed the door and checked on the cameras. I don't fucking know, dude. I think the most important part is that you take off all the power if Springtrap decides to pop out from the vent. Other than that, just get carried by the fact that there's a checkpoint in here. After you complete the arcade minigame, the room catches on fire and Springtrap burns for the millionth time this decade. Anyways, while we're on the topic of dead animatronics, have you ever wanted to build your own animatronic? Maybe you can make sure they don't turn out to be murderous and haunted. You can tune them to your liking if you know what I mean. Welcome to Fun Times. Here the aim of the game is to build Circus Baby. I'm sure this won't backfire in some way. In order to do so, we need to order parts off Amazon and make sure they're not made in Taiwan. No quality here, incinerate them immediately. But that's not where the real fun times is. Here we have to fight off Gay Freddy, Gay Foxy, and my personal favorite. It's a nice homage to Sister location, especially the part with Funtime Freddy, where you play the tape from time to time and hope it does something. 90% of the time it works, the other 10%.
Nope, no one is here.
So far the puzzles in this game have been relatively easy, and dealing with the animatronics has been the hardest part. However, this is one instance where it's actually the opposite. I actively felt like my brain was being pushed to its limits, and then immediately turned into mush whenever I had to return parts. But at least blasting Funtime Foxy with the open blue cannon makes up for it. After beating this room, we then head down this dark catwalk and into this elevator, and this is where things get interesting, story-wise. Yeah, this game actually does go the extra mile and deliver some sort of a story, but you'll have to wait till the end to see the bulk of it. We begin our descent down this elevator before it's hijacked by a group of— I forget what these things are called. The elevator comes crashing down, and we awake in a pool of what is presumably our own blood. At this point it's safe to say that this isn't part of the attraction, and our new objective is to stay alive. We continue forward and into this red room, which is a bit of a maze that secretly foreshadows the next level. Don't believe me? Here's a more convincing argument. Lost Media takes place in a dark, decrepit warehouse. Also, enjoyed that really sick flashlight from earlier? Too bad, here's a shitty one. In terms of scare factor, Lost Media is perhaps the best level. Like I said, it takes place in a warehouse, but it's also a maze. Oddly enough, however, what is the biggest map in the entire game only comes with one animatronic, and I think you know which one it is. No, it's not Bucket Bob, shut up. Ennard is a very formidable foe. Unlike other animatronics we've faced, there isn't a way to repel him, only slow him down. He's very fast, very scary, and very hungry. Hungry for blood. Here we have to sort through a bunch of diodes and match them up according to color, but before you can even do that, you need to venture into the maze and go around to various employee desks to gather a couple of items. Stealth is a very big factor, and it's not an optional strategy, it's optimal. The piss poor lighting and flashlight, coupled with the fact that Ennard is able to give Usain Bolt a run for his medal, make this level amazing. When people ask for FNAF free roam, I'm pretty sure this is what they mean. And if you think this is bad, we'll try it on hard mode. I guarantee you won't last 5 minutes playing this game. After getting the door open, we're able to escape the warehouse up this ladder and into the final room, back alley. And look at that, I told you building Baby was a horrible idea. I gave you life, bitch, I can take it away. Finally, we have to deal with Scrap Circus Baby, Molten Funtime Gay Freddy, Rotting Withered, William Springtrap after I can't, these guys have too many names. We'll just call him Grandpa. This level is hard, and is in some ways a combination of everything we've done before. The first phase is a mini game where we have to shoot pizzas at some kids, and that'll save you a lot of headache. Shooting the Grey Freddies will slow them down, allowing you to shoot the kids. Wait, fuck, no, YouTube, I don't mean it like that. And just like the FNAF tree room, you also have to balance fending off some animatronics. Scrap Baby will emerge from the forest, and you have to play an audio cue to scare her away. Molten Freddy will start crawling around in the vent, but luckily he hasn't seen sunlight in 10 years, so anything above 100 lumens will get him to piss off. And lastly, Grandpa will sit in his chair. Waiting. Quietly waiting. Waiting for you to lock in that new high score on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Shooter 3D. And then, he'll come for you. He functions similarly to FNAF 6. No, not randomly deciding to crawl out of vents and kill you. I mean, the salvage section. You'll notice small changes in his posture, and when he eventually sits up, you need to be ready to shut the door on him. The second phase is relatively simple. You just need to find these pictures of characters and input them into this box. But then comes the fucking poster. If hell is truly real, it's this goddamn poster. I imagine this is what it's like when an old person tries to navigate Windows for the first time. I don't understand, is my mouse in a different language or something? You have to piece together this poster, and you have to be very precise while doing it. It's also on a very weird axis. But remember, you have to manage the other animatronics as well. This is pretty fucked since you're off in some random room in Narnia, right next to Peepaw and very far away from Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby. Far away from Molten Freddy and Scrap from Molten Freddy and from Molten Freddy. For Molten Freddy. You do have a bit of help though in the form of this light. If it starts to flicker, it means you're in danger. Looking at the recording, this level took up half of my gameplay, mainly because I suck at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Shooter 3D. But make it through all that abuse and heartache and failure, and you've officially beaten the glitched attraction, and you can feast your eyes on the ending of the game. We enter a secret room and begin snooping around someone's emails. Their content includes information about Remnant. If you're a lore freak, I'm sure you know what it is. If you aren't, consider yourself lucky. We shit our pants and decide it's probably time to GTFO, but we're snuck up on and knocked out by Vanny. Vanny, who gets more screen time in this game than the entirety of FNAF Security Breach, stabs us and feeds us to a very old and angry man. We then enter a sort of dream sequence where we see the bite of 87, and the game ends as we become one with the grandpa, and the cycle repeats itself once again. This game is actually pretty good, and this comes from someone who despises puzzles. The character design is great, and I especially like how they incorporate mechanics from other FNAF games, staying true to the source material but still managing to be its own thing. Gameplay wise, it's a 4. Scary wise, I mean it's alright. Story, well, it's a better use of Vanny than this shit, but as you'll soon see, there's more than meets the eye. Let me let you in on a little secret. See this criteria? Well, part of it is in the thumbnail. Yes, the best of the best is a slippery slope to climb. I can give all of them high scores and simply waste your time. But bear with me. Some things may shine, but it's all just for show. The truth tends to hide in the shadows below. Our next story is a tale of resentment. What festers for years untreated often builds up until it has nowhere to go. Eventually, the time will come where we must all face our demon. Excuse me one moment. Juniors is a game that puts a twist on the original FNAF formula. It follows a paranormal investigator tasked with investigating something paranormal. In a game series about haunted animatronics, it was bound to happen at some point. The game begins as we awaken a mysterious land called the Barrens, a place between life and death itself. It's here we come face to face with an individual named Paul Bear. He's actually the soul of a dead child or some shit, and he spends his days hiding due to fear of an evil spirit. He strikes a deal with us and agrees to help us with our investigation if we help him with quote, unfinished business. Unbeknownst to him, I'm actually a fraud trying to catch a quick payday from sci-fi.
Can you come over and play with my balls?
We head back into reality and our first night at Juniors begins. Now the aim of the game here is Where's Waldo, with a few extra steps. In Juniors, we're no longer trying to survive until 6 AM. We're given a camera system and a control panel and tasked with figuring out which animatronic is possessed. In order to do so, we have to scan the cameras and look for signs of possession. These signs come in different forms, but on night 1 we're only looking out for excessive light flickering. The challenge comes when trying to figure out which animatronic is exhibiting the signs. If a bunch of them are in the same room, it doesn't really tell you much. Or maybe it tells you a lot, maybe all of them are possessed. Let's try that. Oh, look at that, I won. Seems like we found a winning strat. Why is that number getting so low? The stability system. You might have realized that there isn't a power meter, and this is the part of the game that replaces that. Each animatronic has a percentage of stability displayed right here, and if it drops to 0, it's a game over. Now over time it's going to drop at a certain rate, but if you happen to select an unhaunted animatronic, thinking it is in fact haunted, then it's going to drop a lot. The only way to combat this is to either finish the night before it drops to 0, or call the animatronics for a repair. Two problems with repairs though. It takes a very long time for the animatronic to hop its ass on the conveyor belt, and secondly, if you happen to accidentally call the haunted animatronic right at your doorstep. And that is the gameplay loop of Juniors. Every night, the amount of times you have to find a possessed animatronic increases. Naturally, stability drops a lot, and as the nights go on, you'll have to do more and more repairs, keeping a mental note of which animatronics are clear and which ones aren't. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Now, as I mentioned earlier, some of the challenge comes from pinpointing which animatronic is haunted. Though there are a lot of signs, the lights flickering, fingerprints, the camera dying, the camera moving on its own, woo! And my personal favorite, the self-report. None of that is useful if all the animatronics decide to have a party in the same room.
No party like a Diddy party.
Which one of you motherfuckers is moving the damn camera? After each night, we meet back with Paul Bear and discuss our findings. Most interestingly, these include secret VHS tapes we receive at the end of our shift. Beware, these tapes are very graphic. Graphically impressive, each tape shows off different members of the OG FNAF cast in a claymation style. The first tape shows us Freddy holding an arm and walking up to a door that says Mangle. The door opens and Freddy is bathed in a red light as the tape comes to an end. Spooky indeed. The second tape shows Bonnie and Freddy enjoying a few pints of ice cold, hard lake water while trying to figure out what the fuck this is. As it comes to an end, it's implied that a very angry ghost leaves the body of Freddy and possesses Bonnie. We then see Bonnie carrying a rubber dildo to the same door, doing the same shit Freddy did in the first tape. The third tape shows Chica getting in on the action too, and we see a small glimpse of something real bad. The final tape is the fucking scariest because there's blood, there's children's drawings, and there's something, oh god, what the fuck is that? And that segues us to the final night, unless you're an insane person, in which case there's an extra one for you, have fun. Night 6 is very different from the first 5, and takes the traditional FNAF approach. More specifically FNAF 2. Here we've broken into the basement and we're here to, I don't even know what the fuck we're gonna do. What exactly is your plan with dealing with this? These animatronics aren't even confused like the original, they're evil. Night 6 is divided into 2 parts. The first part is FNAF 2 and the second is... Jesus Christ, what the fuck was that? Getting past the first half is relatively easy, but around 2 AM your objective changes and you have to locate the ghost on the cameras. Which is a smart choice because we all know the cameras are very useless in FNAF 2. You might also realize that the animatronics are now nowhere to be seen. That's because they all decided to pull a sister location and merge into one superior being. Compared to the rest of the game, Night 6 is great. It's hectic, it's fun, the UI is kind of dogshit, but the visuals are amazing. The night ends at 6 AM and we get a cutscene where we see the ghost's true form, a little girl. She attacks Paul Bear, but we stab her with a knife. William Afton would be proud. And the game ends, teasing the start of FNAF 2. If you couldn't guess by now, this game, though very flashy and polished, has a few major problems. That being its raw gameplay mechanics for nights 1 through 5. Let's talk about the tension, strictly nights 1 through 5. There is none. This is because you are the master of your own destiny. Throughout the FNAF series, the games were always kind of unfair. There was always a bit of random chance, especially in FNAF 1 and 6. It was annoying, but it meant you were always on the edge. Now let's look at what triggers a game over in Juniors. Stability at 0 and calling the haunted animatronic. Do you see the problem? You literally have a visual indicator of what you're doing. 3, 2, 1. It's the equivalent of going onto YouTube and typing in FNAF jumpscare. In the original series, you felt like you were on the front lines, like you were the security guard. But in this game, you're just you. a coward behind the screen. If you end up actually getting scared from this game, it's either because you've only been playing for 15 minutes or because you're a massive bitch. Then, there are the animatronics. Excuse me, what is this? Which one of you is responsible for this? Bill? Step into my office, Bill. Explain this to me.
Well, I was trying to make...
Sorry about that, go on.
I was trying to make the game...
One more time, please.
I wanted to make the game more realistic.
Showcased on a very low quality green camera. I think I speak for everyone when I say, no one cares if it was appropriate for the time period. The only time you see them in full is at 500% speed or in a quick repair section that lasts 2 seconds and actually guarantees your safety rather than impending doom. This game is an anomaly. It was hyped up a lot due to its marketing, that being the incredible character design. But in reality, it's kind of dog shit. It is fine to admire the aesthetic, the design, and the nostalgia you might get from Night 6, but these things are like 20% of the game. The game has no stakes, the characters are wasted, and unless you hate yourself or you're a Chad, and want to play the extremely difficult DLC, there's literally no reason to play this game a second time. Gameplay wise, it's mid. Scare factor, I mean you take a guess. The story, however, is pretty good. Too bad there's only 2 points to dish out here. Time is a construct of the universe. We're born, we age, we die, and the cycle starts again. Some things age like milk, and others age like wine. Our next story is the oldest one yet, a tale of two halves from completely different worlds. Will you destroy and break hearts for your own selfish gain, or will you lead a life of truth and compassion and endure the pain? Beware, one works for the other. I won't sugarcoat it, the joy of creation has long been known as the greatest FNAF fan game of all time. A very bold and impressive title to hold, being that it's almost a decade old. But I wasn't sold at the time, mainly because I hadn't played it yet, and let me tell you right now, I'm very glad I did. The game begins with us waking up in the house of an unseen family. We're presumably under the influence of LSD and don't quite know what's going on. After some light interrogation, the family caves and allows us to spend the night. For those of you who are a bit rusty in your academics, this is what biologists refer to as natural selection. Memory 1 takes place in the bedroom. Here we play as the family's son and we're tasked with an age-old objective, survive until 6 AM. A voice then comes on over the baby monitor, who we later find out is a crack addict from the opening cutscene, and tells us we're about to die. How fun. He does offer us a bit of help though, but I don't remember asking. Bring it on, assholes! Now, don't worry, this isn't Five Nights in this kid's crib. The game actually has a series of different memories which all take place in different parts of the house, meaning different gameplay. Nice. But for now, the bedroom. Here we have to hold off until 6 AM, avoiding the clutches of the various ignited animatronics. We have Freddy who will appear by the window and we have to close the blinds for him to piss off. Bonnie and Chica who will pop out and be like, hey, you don't pay the fucking power bill in this house, and you have to turn off the lamp in the room. And finally, the monster under your bed, Ignited Foxy being the scariest of them all and reminding everyone why having a raised bed frame is a bad idea. Don't worry though, he's just here to make sure you get 8 hours of sleep. Now dealing with these 4 can be quite daunting at first, especially since Phone Guy from AliExpress delivers a 500-word essay that no one is going to remember. But like all FNAF games, fan or not, once you die enough times, you'll eventually figure it out. The main challenge of this night, however, is the sanity system. Its progress is based on the light on the wall, and if it turns red, you're dead. Unfortunately, it isn't mentioned at all throughout the night, but luckily I didn't really have to deal with it. Just keep the light on as much as possible and you'll be fine. Probably. Memory 2 takes place in the living room, and this time we play as the child's mother. Phone Guy from AliExpress comes on over the intercom once again. His real name is actually Michael, by the way, and he tells us the same old story. The gameplay of the living room centers around strategy and micromanagement. You'll also realize that it's free roam as well. In this room there are 4 doors, one on the right and left, one that's out of order, and one in the middle, the big door. The doors on the right and left correspond to Foxy and Freddy, who are currently stomping down the hall right now to come and fuck you. Your only defense is to hide. However, the main gimmick of this room is that you can only hide from one animatronic at a time. And at this current moment, they're both going to plow through at the same time. I know, let's hide in the big door. This room has a rather unique mechanic, a 70-inch plasma screen TV. This TV allows you to track the progress of both Foxy and Freddy and lets you pause their movement, allowing you to stagger their entry and giving you enough time to hide at either side of the room. The challenge comes when trying to deal with Ignited Bonnie. He moves when the fuck he wants and doesn't take orders from no goddamn TV. He has 5 phases and you can keep an eye on him by looking through this keyhole and listening out for sound cues. In a nutshell, the entire night revolves around trying to control their entries as much as possible. It might not sound like much, but believe it or not, it's my favorite level. There's also Ignited Chica, who's here to make sure you get up and get active. She'll occasionally start growling and eventually stun you if you sit on the TV for too long, which further complicates how you manage both Foxy and Freddy. This is the level that comes to mind every time I think about the joy of creation. Not the attic, not the bedroom, and not the basement. Oh, getting ahead of ourselves, are we? Memory Tree is the office and takes place in the office. We now play as the father, and I've been holding out on saying names for this very moment. He's none other than Scott Cawthon. This game actually takes place in the fictional world of real life, and we've been playing as Scott Cawthon's family the entire time. Minus Crackhead, we don't know who he is. This level, this memory, this shit is rage-inducing, because I beat it fair and square, and then Freddy came in and was like, you sure about that? Cause I don't think so, and launched me back in time to play it again and again and again. To save you headache, the aim of the game is to flash Freddy 10 times. I didn't know this, so I reached 6 AM and proceeded to lose. Here we're given free roam once again, and 3 monitors that correspond to the closet, hallway, and outside window. We don't have Michael this time telling us what to do, but we have something better. Cryptic messages from Scott from the past or future or some shit.
Freddy, he's here. I can see him. He's not like the others. He just stands there. He knows he can't get to me. He's just waiting.
I'm not going to complain. Michael wasn't very helpful to begin with. In this memory, we have to deal with the same cast. I don't know how they're terrorizing the entire family at the same time, but hey, I respect the hustle. Ignited Foxy will appear on the cameras, and opening the door will result in him killing you. In order for him to piss off, you need to stare at him on the cameras. Contrary to that, Ignited Bonnie will break the camera if you look at him, but you're free to open the door because he's actually kinda chill. Chica will start crawling out the fucking wall, and you need to find her cupcakes hidden around the map. I will say, this memory is kind of exhausting given how repetitive it is, although you might be able to make the same argument for the living room. Who the fuck is messaging me? It just isn't, okay? There's a bit more variation. Semi-finally, we have the basement. Oh god. Which is perhaps the most rage-inducing memory. Here we wake up in a toilet and we're tasked with solving a series of puzzles. What's interesting is that we have these screens telling us what to do instead of Michael, and that's because we are Michael. Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you? Part 1 or Phase 1 or Room 6, fuck you, acts as a way to introduce us to our new friends, the Endos. Although they're probably the same animatronics from earlier, just completely naked. There are 4 different types of Endos, but the most interesting, and the only one I really remember, is the Weeping Angel. Which makes me wonder, did Security Breach copy this game? Phase 1 has us go up to the basement door and then walk back to the bathroom where we see Endo number 1. He is a very kind fellow, respect his personal space, and he won't be inclined to eat you. Phase 1 is very easy, but trust me, it all goes downhill from here. Phase 2 requires us to find and burn various artifacts belonging to the original FNAF cast. Complicating this are a series of minor threats, such as the monster in my closet, Vietnam flashbacks, and the Endo from Phase 1. I will say the jump scares in this memory hit differently, mainly because of how great the atmosphere is, but also because you never really know what the fuck you're doing. After burning all the items, we can then move on to Phase 3, where we meet the man of the hour, the Weeping Angel. Phase 3 requires us to crack 2 codes, but it's made even more difficult when you have to manage the Endo. The room is very tiny, the Endo is an asshole, but if you put a few skill points into agility, you can break his ankles and lock him behind this gate. Doing so will allow you to focus on cracking the second code, and you can then make your way into this very long and dark hallway. You know, the weird thing is, I've been walking for so long, I'm starting to hear footsteps behind me and they keep getting louder and louder, but it's fine, I know it's all in my mind. Would you look at the time while I'm spitting these rhymes? Phase 5 is perhaps the most difficult. We open these gates and all hell breaks loose. Here we have to deal with a shit ton, scratch that, a fuck ton of Endos. 2 Weeping Angels on top of the respect my personal space Endos. In order to beat this room, we need to reach the finish line down this very long hallway. Here, study this map. Trust me, you're going to need it. Maneuvering this section is like maneuvering a minefield. You have to be careful not to bump into any of the stationary endos, but you can't afford to look away because of the weeping angels. Unless you know exactly where they are or are prepared to go through a lot of trial and error, you're in for a very bad time. I'd highly recommend playing with no audio because all it really does is make you prone to becoming deaf. Once you reach the end of the hallway, guess what? It's not the end. Here's another weeping angel behind this gate, blocking the way out. If you manage to skillfully maneuver through all 3 of them, you're rewarded quite generously in Phase 6. Because Phase 6 isn't actually a phase at all, it's just an intermission for the end. The attic is the final memory in the game, supposedly the hardest, but not really. We're tasked with locating Golden Freddy on the cameras and flashing him 12 times. Once again, complicating this are 2 windows and the main man himself. No, not Mr. Can-Do. Creation. Creation will slowly make his way up to the attic. He has a series of phases for each room, and if he gets through all of them, he'll progress to another room. You can flash him to reset his position, but if he changes rooms, he gets a checkpoint. The challenge comes from trying to balance flashing both Creation and Golden Freddy. On top of that, there are the endos who, believe it or not, are the actual challenge of this memory. So much so that every one of my deaths were because of them. But not in the way you might think. Let me explain. Here we have 2 windows, one on the right and the other on the left. If they disappear, they'll start sprinting to one of the doors behind you, and you'll have to do a 180-degree turn and close the door behind you. The problem? It took me an uncomfortably long amount of time to grasp the fact that sound varies with orientation. The attic is supposedly the hardest memory in the entire game, but for me it ended up being the easiest alongside the bedroom. Unfortunately, skill comes at a cost of a lack of common sense, but the sad part is, I never actually got the chance to die to Creation. Why is that sad? Because he has a really cool animation.
What the fuck? I fucking knew it! I knew he was black!
After flashing Golden Freddy enough times, the ending cutscene plays out with the house in shambles and a very scary man standing before us. He then eats us, and the game ends with the house burning down and the scary man taking Scott's identity. I hope this family has insurance because the housing market is a real horror here. Like the glitch attraction, the Joy of Creation is one of the few games that has a very strong thing going for it. Replayability. Pretty much all of the memories are fun to play through a second time. Except for the basement, fuck that place. The game has very unique mechanics with fresh gameplay loops, and the cherry on top is the story. Which is actually pretty dope, with Michael and the gang being demons from another dimension, here to assume Scott's identity. In the end they succeed, and the family is none the wiser. Scary. Currently, there's also a remake on Steam with a demo that focuses around the office. It has new graphics, new mechanics, and possibly a new or improved story. My first time trying it, I got an achievement for doing something completely wrong. Gameplay, it's another easy 4. Scary, if I give you 4, will you leave my eardrums alone? And the story, oh my god, I actually have nothing bad to say about this game. Bravo. But hang on a second, what about the spin-off? The Joy of Creation Reborn. A series of mini-games where you're tasked with doing some bullshit. It sucks. Why even bother giving me a flashlight? I played it for a little bit, got kind of bored, got kind of angry, and got kind of petty. So let's just take this and put it, I don't know, we'll put it right here, I think that's good. Alright, it seems we're almost nearing the end. And I think it's about time we get our hands a little dirty. Every game on the list thus far has had one thing in common. They were complete. I know I gave the Joy of Creation a perfect score, but what if I told you there was a game, though incomplete, had the power to be so much more, possibly breaking the scale as we knew it. To say this game had a rocky development would be putting it lightly. After being rejected from the fanverse, development stopped and we were left with a remnant of what could have been. Even though it's not at its full potential, the demo still holds a lot of promise. Afton Build starts off with a 5 FPS cartoon, showcasing our protagonists as they rush the scene of Fredbear's Fright, this game presumably taking place right after the events of FNAF 3. We then see them rescuing the corpse of Springtrap before evading law enforcement and driving off into the night. We then cut to the actual gameplay where we see that we've strung up Springtrap on this wall. Don't worry though, he doesn't bite, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't come back. This first section acts as a bit of a tutorial, and since this game is free roam, it takes advantage of that advanced movement. You can actually mantle onto some platforms, slide, and even lead side to side. The graphics are also pretty decent, but it is Unreal Engine, so the issue isn't how good it looks, it's more how well it runs. We go back over to Springtrap's Spring, and guess what? I lied, he's alive. uploaded into this pretty dank iPad and acting as our companion throughout the rest of the game. This game takes a pretty unique approach when dealing with William Afton. Based on his demeanor and voice, it's pretty easy to forget that he was a psychopath. Now the plot of the game focuses around helping William Afton regain control of a new body. In return, he promises to
show you endless possibilities. The type of things people dream of. Control over life itself.
If you remember from the glitched attraction, I mentioned Remnant being the soul. You're going to have to keep that in mind since it's a big part of this game's plot. Essentially, in this world, animatronics are very rich in Remnant, so to keep it safe, William Afton fitted the suits with tamper locks that would destroy it if anyone other than himself tried to get a hold of it. Of course, we also know they like to eat people, so before we can even remove said tamper locks, we need to stun them with this ice cream scoop. That's as simple as I can explain the gameplay. It's worth noting that this is a world where animatronics are seemingly thrown out into the streets and are just kind of wandering around doing nothing. Now, to assist William Afton in his quest to murder more children, we have a few gadgets at our disposal. The most important one acting like a remote lever, and attaching it to the scoop allows us to stun the animatronic. After that, removing the tamper lock simply requires you to click these keys in quick succession. Then you can get to removing the remnant, which is a pretty long process according to Afton, so he just tells us to destroy the suit instead. Okay then. And with that, the tutorial is done. Kind of complicated, but the best way to learn is to get your hands dirty anyways. Our first job takes us to Mr. Kandu's junkyard in Nevada. It's also the only job we have since this is a demo. Our duty is to— oh my god, what is all this shit? I thought we were just extracting remnant, what the fuck is all this? One small tiny baby issue with this game is that it's kind of confusing at first. To simplify this very long list, all we really have to do is remove the animatronic's tamper locks and then destroy it, destroying it being the most complicated part. Speaking of it, where's the animatronic? I don't see shit around here.
You eat all my beans, nigga?
Meet Foxy the fox. Interestingly enough, he's decided to go backwards on the evolution scale. Now he's on all fours, and like all Foxies before him, he's pretty fast. Now this is kind of an issue because unlike World War II Freddy in the tutorial, he isn't going to stand still and wait to be scooped, but that's where the other gadgets come into play. We also have a camera and a floodlight, the floodlight being the main MVP here. It uses a tripwire system, so anything that crosses it gets flashbanged and frozen in place. The idea is to place it close to the scoop, allowing Foxy to get flashed so you can scoop him. The cameras, on the other hand, are pretty fucking useless. But it doesn't matter because using the floodlights, I was able to both stun and scoop Foxy, allowing me to remove his tamper locks. Though it did take multiple attempts since he has so many and it gets tougher over time. Now onto the fun part, destroying him. It's pretty convoluted and involves water and electricity. Basically, you have to flood out these trenches and throw an animatronic inside the pool of water to electrocute Foxy. It feels like they missed the opportunity to either shred him in a garbage disposal or squash him into a box. Anyways, the first order of business is to close these valves. Once you're done with that, you need to hack into this room and make sure you don't get fondled by this arm. You do some more hacking and this will allow water to slowly fill into the trench. After that, throw this old person into the trench and it'll kill Foxy. And you're pretty much done. That's the end of the demo. This game frustrates me. Not just gameplay wise, which it does. The concept is pretty decent, but its strengths are its movement and mechanics, and yet you don't get to do much with either. You can jump down into the trench, but it's too high to mantle anyways. You can jump into this truck to hide, but good luck getting out. Leaning is also a very good mechanic as well, but you pretty much forget it exists the moment you leave the tutorial. Of course there are a bunch of bugs as well, but this being a demo you kind of expect it. What wasn't a bug though and ended up being extremely annoying was that there's no order to what you do things. Meaning, you can flood the area before removing Foxy's tamper locks. If you flood the area and fall in, again, good luck getting out. Also, how am I supposed to know that the main part of beating the level is hiding up in some rafters in the middle of the sky? Essentially, the game tells you to quote, cut loose the Bonnie animatronic. You'd think it was a very obvious one right outside the control room, but no, it's not. Looking at other playthroughs of this game, it was also common to see other people getting completely lost, fucked by bugs, and just not even finishing it. I know it doesn't really matter now since the game is dead, but let's dream for a moment. Let's go back to that opening cutscene. If you ask me, they should have scrapped this entire level and made a demo centered around actually breaking into Fredbear's fright to retrieve Springtrap. Think about how strong of an opening that would be. Breaking into Fredbear's fright, utilizing that sick movement to sneak past law enforcement, or maybe something slightly worse. You can even use the cameras. Unfortunately, as it stands, the game has bugs, and the gameplay is boring. I don't know how to code games, but I'd still love to see someone resurrect this one. Afton Build gets 2 ratings. For what we have, it's a solid dog shit out of 10. But scooping out its remnant to reveal its delicious movement, coupled with my suggestion for a better opening, one can only dream. I'd like to take this time to apologize for my security breach comparisons and mentions throughout the video. Speaking of garbage, Nvidia's control panel. Slow the fuck down, this isn't a sponsor. For those of you who don't know, Nvidia has a piece of software that allows you to tune various graphic settings. It's actually somewhat useful, yet it's quite shit. The interface is outdated, and navigating it is terrible. It doesn't matter what specs your PC has, it's always going to run like garbage. What exactly is my point? It's old, it hasn't been updated. Windows updates and PC hardware will move forward while this one will stay behind. Eventually, without updates, things become unoptimized, they degrade, and sometimes they break. Time may leave some things behind, you can choose to bring them up to speed, or you can start fresh and deliver something that was even better than the original. Our next story is just that, a remnant lost to time, replaced by something new. Fredbear's Fright is another exceptionally old game. Released back in 2017, it was around the time I got my first laptop. It was a very shitty machine that was able to kind of play Minecraft and Fortnite at 10 FPS, but it also allowed me to play my first ever FNAF fan game. Now, 7 years later, on a much newer machine, the game proceeds to bug out and crash. For some reason, the camera system and office began to overlay on top of one another, and the game slowly died each time. I reinstalled, I cried, and then gave up. But then I saw a glimmer of hope. Another game made by the same dev. Christmas. Whereas Fredbear's Fright was more of a traditional FNAF fan game, Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot is another one of those games that takes initiative. Though released a mere 1 year after its predecessor, it fortunately works. Thank God. The game begins with an info tape starring Fredbear and Golden Bonnie. We're tasked with disassembling them, but don't worry, it's not nearly as precise as help wanted. The tape ends as their endos are fitted into the FNAF 1 suits, and the game starts for real as we're driving down the road, presumably towards the establishment. But instead of playing as a security guard, this time we take the role of a father looking for his son, and we're accompanied by a private investigator over the radio. He runs us through what to expect once we're inside, and the game kicks off in the first level. It plays out similarly to FNAF 6, minus the extra help and left side vent. In order to beat it, we have to disconnect the audio and video from various cameras. Complicating this are Fredbear and Golden Bonnie, who will appear in the office requiring you to hide under the desk. There's also a naked person that's wandering around as well, but dealing with him just requires that you use your flashlight. This first section also plays out like Sister Location, specifically the part with Funtime Freddy. You're unable to check the hallway if you're disconnecting the audio or video, and doing so takes quite a bit of time. If you get too greedy, you'll more than likely pay the price for it. Ultimately, however, this level is pretty easy. You have sound cues to help you out, so just don't play without headphones, I guess. We then cut to another tape where we're able to play around with the controls for Freddy. We can make him laugh, move forward, or induce a control seizure. Anyways, back to the task at hand. We now head to the storage room by guidance of the PI where we collect a couple of items. However, the actual gameplay begins when we need to open this door. In order to do so, you have to hold down this button to charge it, but you also have to pay attention to the ominous curtain in the room. For behind it lies something sinister, something evil, something with sheer patience. Over time, the curtain will begin to open, so you have to balance charging the door and closing it back. However, it's made more difficult because the second you stop charging the door, the power begins to drain back to zero. Little by little, second by second, bit by bit, maybe I'll go for 50% this time. Oh shit. After completing the room, you guessed it, another tape plays. This one instead being about arcade machines. Here we must face the ultimate challenge of playing this very shitty minigame while an exceptionally awful track of music plays in the background. After doing that, a very devious looking bear corrupts the arcade machine and it breaks down entirely. The tape ends, I question my sanity, and the next room commences. this one being a more difficult version of the previous room. The PI explains that we must go through the exit via this vent, but things take a turn when he's mysteriously cut off, unable to offer us any more guidance. Don't worry though, just like the previous room, we need to click and hold to open the way out. Luckily your progress is saved. However, this time you have to deal with 2 animatronics. You have to keep this Freddy thingy winded up, and there's also a very ugly rat roaming around the house. He'll occasionally stop by to say hi, and you need to flash him to get him to piss off. After you clear the room, guess what? Too bad, no more VHS tapes for you. Instead, you enter the world of the tapes. This is a practical exam, and in order to pass, you need to climb into this highly spring-locked Freddy suit and exit with all your limbs intact. It's kind of weird that this takes place in some dark back room and our character starts breathing right as the instructor says not to, making you wonder if the employee we play as is into some kinky shit. The sequence ends and we go back to the present where the semi-final and my personal favorite level begins. So far the entire game has had one issue. It was too easy. Well, not anymore. For starters, the PI we had helping us out is gone. He works hourly and we didn't pay him enough. Secondly, there's a lot going on in here. Why do I have a gas mask? The hell do you want, asshole? Oh god, Jesus Christ. Room 4 is pretty stressful. Think FNAF 2, but kind of worse. Kind of. Firstly, we have a toxicity meter, which will go up over time. In order for it to go down, you have to put on this gas mask. This is actually a pretty cool feature when you consider it was originally supposed to be in FNAF 2. In front of you is a hall, and throughout the night, Rotten Foxy will show up. In order for him to piss off, you need to turn off the power completely. Behind you is Rotten Bonnie, who will just stand there, and you need to turn on this fan to blow him away. And finally, there's a random assholes in the vents. You'll hear a sound cue, and in order to get rid of them, you need to turn off the ventilation. The catch is, doing so makes the toxicity meter increase a lot quicker. The best part about this night, however, is probably Bonnie. This is because he has 3 phases. Phase 1, he is not there. Phase 2, he'll just stand there, not able to kill you. And then phase 3, he'll lean in when he is able to kill you. The thing is, when he's just standing there, it's for the sole purpose of edging you the entire night, because you can't get rid of him when he's in phase 2. This means you have to constantly worry about him while dealing with the others. But anyways, survive for 6 minutes and the room is completed. Another good old VHS tape plays out where we simply clean the Golden Freddy suit and the final room begins. Here we're tasked with transporting the suit throughout the facility. Keep in mind the original plot of this game was to find someone's son. Like the previous one, this is another excellently made room, and it's pretty similar to the attic in the Joy of Creation. In order to return the suit, you have to find it on the cameras and click the return button. However, you can only do this when the eyes aren't glowing. The other animatronics include Mini Freddy and Mini Bonnie, who can be fended off by using a piece of paper and some electrical wires respectively. It's kind of hard to take this room seriously when you can literally do this. The last clown on the list will sometimes pop up on screen, just like this YouTube ad.
You know what Anthony Starr does with his free time?
And you have to reboot the cameras to get rid of him. Though not as difficult as the previous room, it's definitely still decent compared to the first few. But it's like the developers knew this because there's an insane mode starring Room 4. I didn't manage to beat it on the first try, so it's probably hard. The game ends with us coming face to face with the suit, our controlled shock remote beyond fucked, and the animatronic therefore devouring us entirely. We then cut to a camera feed of the establishment from FNAF 1 where we see the Golden Freddy suit on the camera system as the screen glitches and we get the tragic ending. What the fuck? Hang on a second. Is this the first fan game on the list with multiple endings? 2 to be specific. Remember earlier when we went to that storage room? No. It turns out if you take a quick detour along this way, type in this code that I definitely didn't Google, and then proceed to play through the entire game again, you can actually zap the suit before it kills you and get the ending. I will say, pretty impressive that they went the extra mile to do all this, and the extras back that up even more. Any FNAF fan game that doesn't require you to sit in the same office for 5 nights straight is by all accounts going to be a strong fan game. Like the glitch attraction and the Joy of Creation, this game has exactly that. Oh my god, is that another secret ending? Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot actually surprised me, and it was nice to see them using similar characters to that of Fredbear's Fright. Its gameplay is good, but kind of weak in the first half. I wish they'd made it a little bit harder. The most unsettling sequence was probably the first, with a gradual decline from there on out. The story exists. Let's be real here, this was always just for bonus points. There's tons of FNAF fan games with lots of stories, let's not pretend like we're actually paying attention. If you couldn't tell, I tried to avoid games where the gameplay was 5 nights doing the same shit but it gets slightly harder over time. Despite the fact that those games might be good, I mean, What do you want me to talk about? Oh look, this cat will show up at your door and you need to click this button for it to fuck off. And guess what, on night 5, it shows up 5.27 seconds quicker. So you gotta be a little bit faster, okay? I know there are others that deserve to be on this list. For all my talk of time, it definitely wasn't on my side. Look at that, my shift is over. I'd love to stay and chat about some more of these great games, but I get the opposite of overtime. They dock my pay if I stay past 6. Maybe I'll come back, maybe I won't. That's for you to decide. If you do end up deciding, decide on some suggestions as well. But for now, this is where your story ends. Until next time.